Hello everyone, it's Foo here, and today I want to talk about Kilowattrel, Scarlet and Violet's answer to the bird evolutionary line found in most Pokemon games. And Wattrel and Kilowattrel are great Pokemon. I was lucky enough to find a shiny Wattrel while speed EV training at a mass outbreak. And I'm so glad I did because it really made me look at Kilowattrel and how good it can be. So it's got the Flying Electric typing, which is really good. We've seen Thundurus and Zapdos use it to great effect before. It's great offensively and defensively. And Kilowattrel has amazing stats as well. Base 125 speed is so fast, that is really, really good. And a base 105 special attack stat is usable, so this is definitely going to be a fast special attacker. Its bulk isn't great, but that's kind of okay. It's a bit more of a glass cannon. But the typing and stats are only the start of the story, because it has 3 great abilities. One is Volt Absorb, which allows it to have an immunity to electric type moves, which is always great. It also gets a signature ability called Wind Power. This is really interesting. So when it gets hit by a wind type move, it gets charged. Wind type moves are a new category in Scarlet and Violet, and they include a lot of flying type moves that you'd expect, like Gust, Air Slash, Air Cutter, Hurricane, but also some more interesting moves like Heat Wave and Petal Blizzard, so you can really try to play around with activating wind power. But the most important one is that your own Tailwind will activate wind power. So as long as Kilowattrel's on the field when Tailwind is set up, it will get charged. And what charged means is your next electric type attack will do double damage, which is a huge power boost. I've done some experimenting with this, and unfortunately it does seem like only on that first turn when you're in Tailwind do you get the charge. Once you've used an electric type move, that's gone, and you don't have it for like the entirety of the Tailwind, which I think wouldn't be too broken because it's very telegraphed and you can only use electric type moves, so your opponent can definitely play around it. I've also checked whether switching in on a Tailwind will activate your wind power, and it doesn't. So it's only if you're on the field when Tailwind goes up. Fortunately, Kilowattrel can set up Tailwind itself, and it's actually a really good user of Tailwind because it's very fast. It's able to get it up pretty easily. So that definitely opens up set options. And then the last ability it has is Competitive, its hidden ability, which gives it a 2-stage special attack boost when its stats are dropped. And this is really amazing, especially in doubles, when Intimidate is thrown around quite a lot to try to control physical attackers. This will give Kilowattrel a special attack boost, and so it's really, really nice. So what sets can you run on Kilowattrel? I'll talk about some single sets and then some double sets, and I've actually made a VGC team which I think is pretty good, and you can use the code for laddering on ranked battles if you want. But first, the single sets. So you can have quite a vanilla single set, which is just a fast special attacker, which can hold the heavy duty boots if you're concerned about entry hazards. Otherwise, Choice Scarf or Choice Specs would also be fine on this set. You want Thunderbolt and Volt Switch for powerful electric type moves, Volt Switch allowing you to pivot around. And then you can have Air Slash and Hurricane or Terra Blast, depending on if you want an interesting Terra type. I would say that actually Electric Terra is fine on this Pokemon, or Flying Terra if you expect this to take on a lot of grass types. But you could go with Ground if you want to take on other electric types a bit better. Obviously, if you go with the Volt Absorb ability here, then you can switch in on electric types really safely and then hit back with a ground type Terra Blast. So that's the first set, which is quite plain, I would say. The second set for singles is going to play around with that wind power ability, which is very interesting, and it actually gives you a reason to use Tailwind in singles, which you don't see too frequently. So this set is similar to the last set, but instead I would advise the heavy duty boots because I think you'll be switching in and out a lot more. I think Thunderbolt and Volt Switch are great options on this set because you want to be setting up Tailwind, and then you have 2 options for how to use your charge. You can either go for Thunderbolt for a bit more damage and you can stay in when you click Thunderbolt, or you can get the charged Volt Switch out to deal a ton of damage and then go into a different Pokemon to take advantage of the Tailwind. And the last attack is going to be either Air Slash or Hurricane for the flying type stab. I like this set because you generally don't see Tailwind too much in singles, but I do think it is a cool way to use Kilowattrel. In doubles, this is the first set that I'm going to recommend, which is very similar to the last set I talked about for singles, which is the Wind Power set. However, instead of heavy duty boots, you don't have to worry about hazards so much in doubles, so Covert Cloak is great here because you can ignore the flinch from Fake Out. That means that you don't necessarily have to run Protect on this set because on that first turn, you're almost guaranteed to get Tailwind as long as you outspeed the opponent, which is very likely likely with this high base speed. But if you do want Protect, you can swap that out for one of the electric type moves. The second double set that I advise, I think is a lot more consistent and really powerful, and this is the one that I built around, which is a competitive set. Now, on this set, I still want to set up Tailwind because Tailwind is so valuable in doubles. It's such a strong form of speed control because both of your Pokemon benefit. But on this competitive set, where you're hoping to get some stat drops so that you boost Kilowattrel's special attack, you can't really run Covert Cloak because though it would prevent Fake Out flinches, it would also prevent Snarl's special attack drops, Icy Wind's speed drops, Spirit Break special attack drops, and all of these things are ways that your competitive can get activated. So I would really advise against Covert Cloak. So on this set, I think Focus Sash is a lot better to ensure you survive the first turn. And I do think that Protect is required on this set because that's the way that you can try to beat those Fake Out matchups. You have to Protect on the first turn instead. Thunderbolt and Air Slash are all you need for good damage, and you've got the Tailwind there. So that's how this one differs from the Wind Power set, is that you're hoping to get those competitive boosts. So this is the team I came up with my shiny Kilowattrel with competitive. The idea was that I would pair it up with a Garchomp for fast, powerful Earthquakes next to the flying type Kilowattrel. And it also means that any Intimidators that try to drop Garchomp's attack stat will actually be boosting up Kilowattrel. So they're a really nice combination, and the rest of the team kind of came from there. I've made 2 iterations of this team, changing up the last slot. One has Choice Scarf Oranguru and one has Eviolite Stantler, and I've got some battles to show off what they do, and you can choose which code you want to use if you want to go and use this on the ranked ladder. So this first battle against Zaya, they have a really interesting looking team. It's potentially a Trick Room team because Armarouge does get access to Trick Room and most of the Pokemon on this team are a bit slower. But I like my usual lead of Kilowattrel and Garchomp into this because if they try to redirect with a Moongus while setting up Trick Room with Armarouge, I can still get that spread damage Earthquake across and hit that Armarouge for really good damage. So let's see how that plan turned out. So as you can see, my opponent's going to lead with their Grimmsnarl and their Skeledirge. It's so cool seeing Skeledirge because I hadn't seen it so much, and this team is actually really nice in supporting it. So on the first turn, I'm actually not going to set up Tailwind. I usually set up Tailwind, but against this team where everything is really slow, there's absolutely no need to set up Tailwind. So I'm just going to go for an attack. I'm actually going to go for an Air Slash into the Skeledirge and an Earthquake because I was thinking Earthquake damage into Skeledirge will do a ton and then hopefully Air Slash can pick it off. But as you can see, Skeledirge actually terrestrializes into a Grass type, which doesn't work out too well for them. They were obviously predicting the Earthquake, and so they went for the Reflect and the Grass terrestrialization to really mitigate any Earthquake damage because now they resist and they've got the Reflect up to prevent too much damage. But because that made Air Slash super effective, Skeledirge still takes a turn. Skeledirge actually ends up going for a Will-O-Wisp on my Garchomp as well. So in this position, Garchomp is completely muted. Really, it can't do very much at all, which is a shame. But I have that great matchup with my Kilowattrel into the Grass-type Skeledirge. So I'm just going to go for the same move again. I'm thinking that Grimmsnarl will set up a Light Screen, so my Air Slash this time won't actually knock out the Skeledirge, so I do need a little bit more chip with the Earthquake. But actually, they swap out Skeledirge to get the Light Screen up into their Gyarados, potentially not realizing that I have competitive, which then boosts up my Air Slash damage despite the Light Screen. I go for another Earthquake, as I said, I explained the reasons why, but that's not going to do too much damage now because Garchomp has taken an Intimidate, is burned, there's Reflect up, so Grimmsnarl only takes a tiny little bit of damage. So in this position, my Garchomp really isn't doing very much. It's not really got any damage output here, so I want to switch it out. At least I can reset that Intimidate attack drop and maybe wait out the Reflect turns before it can come in and do some more damage. So I switch in my Amoonguss. It's got a pretty good matchup in this position, and I'm going to go for a Thunderbolt into the Gyarados. I've still got my Focus Sash on my Kilowattrel, so I'm not really scared of what the opponent can do. And if they want to go for a Spirit Break into my Kilowattrel, I will get another competitive boost, so I'm not concerned about that. They actually target into my Amoonguss, which is fine with me because obviously I can tank that, and Amoonguss isn't there for damage output, so the special attack drop isn't an issue. Now they're going to bring back their Gyarados, they're playing very defensively because though I have super effective moves into their grass types and their Gyarados, if they switch between them, I will never catch them with the super effective move. So I go for a Rage Powder trying to protect my Kilowattrel, because at the moment Kilowattrel is just so strong and so threatening against my opponent. And if I keep that Focus Sash up, then I'm going to have a really good time in terms of, you know, just keeping that pressure on. So now they've got two grass types on the field. They bring in their Skeledirge again, and they've got their Amoonguss, as I do get a resisted Thunderbolt off that still does a very decent amount to that Amoonguss, which is nice because of my competitive boosts. In this position, I'm a bit concerned with them going for a Rage Powder and then breaking my Kilowattrel's Sash. So I go for a Protect this turn. Actually, I'm most concerned about Spore into Kilowattrel because I don't want them to put Kilowattrel to sleep. It's really my best way of dealing with the Gyarados. I've got Scizor in the back, which can deal with most of the other Pokemon. The Skeledirge and the Gyarados are the most threatening Pokemon here, though, and I need my Kilowattrel to take them down before it goes down. So knowing that they probably go for a Rage Powder this turn, I'm going to go for an Air Slash and follow up with an Earthquake again, just because I'm not exactly sure if Air Slash will take it out. I thought it might, the damage roll looked really close, but I am able to ensure that with my burned Garchomp, it still has enough damage output to take that Amoonguss down. So now Skeledirge does manage to go for the Torch Song into my Kilowattrel, breaking my Focus Sash. Which is a shame. So now I have to be super careful because I will die to the next hit, which means that even Spirit Break is concerning. So what I'm going to do here is just reposition again. What I want to do is get my Amoonguss in, because neither of these Pokemon are too scary if I can redirect their attacks. I mean, I can take out the Skeledirge with my Air Slash, but I need to have my Amoonguss in to redirect attacks away from my Kilowattrel. They actually end up switching out their Skeledirge into their Gyarados again, which gives me another competitive boost, but they're in a really awkward position here. What they were doing there was trying to sack their Gyarados potentially so that they could get a Spirit Break into my Kilowattrel, and then Skeledirge could come in and win, which it probably would have done, to be honest, because both Amoonguss and Scizor are weak to Torch Song, and my Garchomp has no damage against it. So that's where this team that we're seeing, I think, is so cool, because it's actually making Skeledirge really, really strong and a big threat. But fortunately, my boosted up Kilowattrel can get that Thunderbolt off into the Gyarados, and Rage Powder Amoonguss is just going to support it perfectly here, because my opponent has no way for Gyarados or Grimmsnarl to get around that, and Kilowattrel can stay safe on this side of the field. So Skeledirge comes in here, and I can, you know, just fire off an Air Slash into that slot while going for Rage Powders with Amoonguss, and my opponent sees that positioning and they end up forfeiting. I thought that was a really great first match to show off how powerful Kilowattrel could be. And in this one, it's not just a supporting Tailwind Pokemon, but it's actually my win condition. I needed that Pokemon to take on both the Gyarados and the Skeledirge, because it just had the damage output that the rest of my Pokemon didn't. And that's all to do with its matchup into Intimidate. With all my physical attackers, I need Kilowattrel to deal out massive damage if the opponent is spamming Intimidate. So that's why I picked to build around Kilowattrel. In the next match, I'm not showing off Kilowattrel, I'm showing off Oranguru. As I said, I've got two versions of the team with two different fun Pokemon. One is a Choice Scarf Oranguru, and one is an Eviolite Stantler. So let's look at how Oranguru performs. In this one, my opponent seems to have a really powerful Trick Room team, and I opt to go with a slightly different lead than usual. In this one, my opponent is going to lead off with what's a relatively unexpected lead in Annihilate and Toedscruel. I really want to do a video about Toedscruel because that Pokemon is weird. Unfortunately, I have a bad matchup here because I led an Intimidate Pokemon into a Defiant Pokemon, but my Gyarados and Garchomp don't look too bad here because they have pretty good typing matchup. My Gyarados has Terra Flying, and I have Terra Blast on this, which is super effective against both of the opponents. Now, I was slightly concerned about Annihilate going for a Choice Scarf Final Gambit, which seems to be what most of them do in these situations. It doesn't actually do that. It goes for a Rock Tomb, which I think it implies it may still be Choice Scarf, because that's a way of having some fast speed control if you have Choice Scarf plus Rock Tomb. The Toadstool actually goes for Spore. I was thinking it might go for Trick Room because I know that it does get that, but Spore makes sense as well, just trying to neutralize one of my Pokemon on the first turn. You can see that the Rock Tomb goes off before my Garchomp gets to act, so that confirms that this is a Choice Scarf Annihilate. I'm going for an Earthquake here, mainly just to break any potential Focus Sash on the Toadstool, because I need to get this Terra Blast off before it moves. Toadstool was either going for a Spore or a Trick Room there, we don't know, because Mycelium Might means that it would always move last with Spore and with Trick Room. There's also a weird graphical thing with the health bars in this one, where you don't really see Annihilate's health bar drop very much, but it did actually take damage from that last Earthquake. Anyway, they bring in the Armarouge, which is a pretty scary Pokemon. I was thinking maybe the Trick Room's going up this turn. I'm just going to go for another Earthquake because it does really good damage to both of the opponents. I do have Telepathy on my Oranguru, so I can definitely take that. And the opponent's going to go for a Psyshock into my Garchomp, which it does eat. They managed to live on like 1 HP with their Armarouge, which I don't know if that's just amazing EV spread or I don't know. But anyway, on this next turn, they go for a Rock Tomb into my Garchomp, which drops its speed, but my Choice Scarf Oranguru still outspeeds the rest of their Pokemon. So I can go for an Instruct and get the Earthquake off before anything else could move, and that knocks out both Annihilate and Armarouge, and that's really cool. So Oranguru already showing what it does with its Choice Scarf, because it had a Rock Tomb speed drop, but it still outsped stuff. And then, yeah, you can see that I had already knocked out both opponents that turn, so the Earthquake doesn't do anything there. And the opponent's last Pokemon is Supreme Overlord. This guy, what's he called? Kingambit. Very powerful Pokemon. It now has like a Life Orb boost just from its ability because 3 Pokemon have fainted. I'm going to switch out my Oranguru because I feel like it's going to be a very important Pokemon in this endgame. And this is where I really enjoyed using my Oranguru. I think it's a very important member of this team. So they Terrastalize into a Steel type. I wasn't sure what it was going to be because I've seen a number of different typings used for Kingambit's Terrastalization. I've seen kind of water and stuff. I did predict the Sucker Punch into Garchomp, so I protected there. I think probably with the speed drop, I may still outspeed Kingambit depending on how it's built. So I've brought in my Amoonguss, and now I'm just going to try to get a Spore off into the Kingambit. They went for Protect. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe just scouting to see what I wanted to do. Or maybe hoping that I would go for the Earthquake and attack into my Amoonguss or something like that. But that allows me to get Oranguru in for free, and I can go for the Trick. So I can give this Kingambit the Choice Scarf, so that it then has to lock itself into a move, and it goes for the Kowtow Cleave, meaning that it's locked into that and it cannot use Sucker Punch, so that my Garchomp is now definitely going to be able to get an attack off against this Kingambit. It can't go for that Sucker Punch. I also get the Spore off, so this Kingambit's in a really, really poor position now, thanks to my Oranguru and my Mushroom, the Amoonguss. I can go for a Life Orb Hyper Voice and deal a decent amount of damage considering how bulky Kingambit is, and they stay asleep. So now I've got perfect positioning. I can just go for an Earthquake and an Instruct to take out this Kingambit, and the opponent forfeits there. So that was just showing off what Oranguru does. It's really, really important, especially into Garganacl matchups, because you can trick the Garganacl, the Choice Scarf, so that locks it into like Iron Defense or Recover or whatever, and it can't do what it wants to do. Otherwise, Garganacl can be a real pain to deal with. So I think that it's a really neat trick to have. And obviously Telepathy with Instructor's perfect next to Earthquake Garchomp. So I really love this Pokemon, and I think you should give it a try. But the alternative is to try Stantler, which is equally very cool. So Stantler can hold the Eviolite now, despite Weirdeer, its Pokemon Legends Arceus evolution, not being available in Scarlet and Violet yet. It will come with when Home is introduced next year. Stantler can hold and benefit from the Eviolite, and it also gets Intimidate. So this makes Stantler super bulky. But in this battle, I will show you why you might want to use it on this team specifically. Here, my opponent has got a really interesting team, and they are going to lead with Grafai and Bishop. And why that's so interesting is because that's another new Eviolite user that wasn't before. So Stantler and Bishop can now hold Eviolite when they couldn't before, because obviously Bishop evolves into King Gambit. Now this looks like an awkward positioning because I've just given the Bishop Defiant, but that's kind of okay. They missed the Super Fang, which is good news for me, but that allows me to get the skill swap off so that I can give the Bishop the Intimidate, and that causes my Kilowattrels competitive to activate, which is kind of the reason you run Stantler. It's the only thing to get Intimidate and skill swap. And because I can skill swap into the Bishop, it means that I can actually get an attack boost. Unfortunately, that means that they can Sucker Punch me the next turn and take me out, but it's kind of okay. I mean, that's the reason that the skill swap Defiant was good, because it showed that Stantler was pressuring them too, and they felt the need to take out the Stantler because I had taken that Defiant boost. I managed to get some damage on the Bishop, but damn, does that Eviolite make it bulky. It doesn't have a very high special defense stat, but my +2 Thunderbolt did not do much damage, which is pretty crazy. So now I'm going to go for another Thunderbolt. Now I'm protected under Rage Powder, and so Sucker Punch went into Amoonguss but failed because Amoonguss went in for Rage Powder. So I can take out the Bishop there. So you've seen what the Stantler and the Kilowattrel combination does, and that's kind of why you want to use it. Now they do have Arcanine in the back, which gives me another +2 with Kilowattrel, but I was a bit reckless here. I was really hoping they didn't have Extreme Speed. Most Arcanine don't run Extreme Speed, but this one did have it. If it didn't have Extreme Speed, I would have knocked out a bulky Arcanine at +4, I'm pretty sure. You can see my Rage Powder here trying to redirect Arcanine's attack away. Didn't work because Extreme Speed has higher priority. Well, it's got the same priority, I think, but Arcanine is just faster than Amoonguss. So that's a shame. So Grafio Parting Shots out, which is kind of fine, and I bring in my Garchomp because now I can get some Earthquakes off. I'm going to Terastallize into a Ground type, get the really powerful Earthquakes that you can get from Terra Ground Garchomp, and hopefully take out this Arcanine before it can do much damage to my Amoonguss. I am going to have to protect with my Amoonguss because Amoonguss has no way to mitigate the spread damage, unlike Gyarados, Kilowattrel, and Oranguru, who completely don't care about the Earthquake. They actually Terastallize into Ghost-type Mimikyu, which is kind of interesting. I wasn't sure why they did this at first, because it didn't seem necessary in terms of a defensive Terastallization, because I can now actually hit them with Dragon-type moves. But it's probably just to get the damage boost on some of their Ghost-type moves, but they don't actually end up going for a Ghost-type move this first turn. So they direct some attacks into my Amoonguss, which protects, and I can go for my Terra Ground Earthquake, which does a ton of damage. In fact, it does all the damage to Arcanine, so much that its health just disappears. And I also break the Disguise of the Mimikyu, which is really nice all in one turn. The Mimikyu does go for its Play Rough in this turn, and so it deals some damage to Garchomp, but I have the Rough Skin, and it's holding the Life Orb, and I got the busted kind of health drop as well. So Mimikyu's taken a little bit of damage, which is really nice. Grafai comes in. I'm kind of expecting a Focus Sash on the Grafai, so I need to work out a way to deal with that. So first off, I'm going to Spore into the Mimikyu to try to prevent any Shadow Sneak kind of KOs into my Garchomp. So I want to make sure that that doesn't happen, and I can put that to sleep really nicely. And I still have to worry about the Grafai that potentially outspeeds my Garchomp, but I do have Rage Powder on Amoonguss, so I can hopefully redirect that away, as long as it's not got safety goggles, which would be kind of weird for Grafai, like Covert Cloak or Focus Sash is probably the best items on that Pokemon. It does get to knock off my Aguav Berry, but I can go for the Dragon Claw into the Grafire. Obviously, I can't go for Earthquake with Amoonguss and not protecting that turn. But now I've broken its potential Focus Sash, although it didn't actually show that it had a Focus Sash, so maybe it wasn't Focus Sash. But now I've broken any potential Focus Sash, I can very safely go for a Rage Powder and then an Earthquake. Actually, I say very safely. There was a chance that Mimikyu could wake up and KO Amoonguss that turn, and then Grafire outspared and took out my Garchomp, so there was a chance that I would lose there, but I wasn't sure if Mimikyu would actually take out my Amoonguss from there. Regardless, that's the end of that battle. It just demonstrated what Stantler could do. It didn't demonstrate the full capacity of what Stantler could do. I believe in this Pokemon and I think it's really cool. Weedle Tornadle also said that I had to use Stantler, so that's another reason why I had to make this version of the team too. If you want to use a Stantler version of the team, Stantler is just super bulky with Intimidate and Eviolite. You saw skill swap so that you can activate the competitive on the Kilowattrel, but you can also side skill swap to give your ally Pokemon Intimidate so that the opponent's attack stats are dropped, which is really helpful. Helping Hand is there so that it can support the team outside of Kilowattrel. Body Slam is great for spreading paralysis and having a stab attack so that you're not just taunt bait. And the last move is Disable, which I stand by. I think that this is a really cool option next to Kilowattrel. Kilowattrel's so fast, a lot of people rely on priority to take it out. And if you can protect on Kilowattrel, predict them to go for their priority move into it, and then disable with Stantler, then they can't use their priority and you can get another attack off with Kilowattrel. Unfortunately, I don't have too much footage of it actually working. I can show you like this endgame where if my opponent had Jet Punched into my Garchomp, as they probably should have done, I could have then disabled it and then won the endgame with my Kilowattrel. But instead they went for Jet Punch into my Stantler, which, to be fair, it's the true threat, but they're not supposed to know that. They had a Tailwind, but their Pelipper was paralyzed, so it wouldn't have outsped my Garchomp. So them Jet Punching into my Stantler meant that I could have gone for Rock Slide and taken out their Pelipper and done damage to their Palafin. So I don't necessarily agree with their play, but it ended up working out for them, which is fine. So if in that instance I had been able to disable their Jet Punch, I would have actually won this endgame. So Disable, I stand by it. I think it's great. You can also do it on Extreme Speed Dragonite. You can do it on Sucker Punch Pokemon. I think it's really cool. And I'm relying on you guys to try out the team code and get some really fun Disable plays in there. That's going to be all for today. I hope I've sold you on Kilowattrel, and I hope I've also sold you on both Choice Scarf Oranguru and Eviolite Stantler. I think they're both really fun Pokemon to play around with. But that's going to be all for today. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content. All that's left to be said is I've been Foo, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.